3 weeks ago, the Encore mission was released to us, and alongside it came one of, if not the strongest exotic Bungie has ever given to us. That, of course, being Choir of One. Now, we've already made a couple of videos about this exotic, but at the time, it was still in its base form. And each week since, we have been unlocking both the intrinsics, which up its stats, while also opening up multiple options within weapon crafting, but simultaneously, we've also gained access to its other exotic catalysts. Today, guys, we are going to be doing our final review of Choir of One, going over everything that has changed with this weapon since its base form arrived at us, and then sitting down and showing you what I believe is to be the strongest version of this exotic. Now, for those that may have forgotten, or perhaps you haven't even seen this weapon, Choir of One is the first ever special ammo auto rifle in Destiny 2. Much like our rocket assisted sidearms, Bungie is really doing this thing where they're actually blending different archetypes and different weapon types. Now, with it being a special weapon, but an auto rifle, this means it pretty much is utilized like a primary weapon, but it does a chunky amount of damage with some fantastic exotic traits to boot. First, we have the exotic trait Fanatical Lance. This reads that rapid final blows cause targets to explode into a pool of radiolarian fluids. Now, if you hip fire with this weapon, this launches multiple projectiles at once in a slow-moving spread pattern. If you ever watch wyverns shoot, this is essentially the same fire animation. Now, the projectiles detonate on impact, as you see here. Now, for the weapon's intrinsic trait, we have Command Frame. This fires extended range, heavy caliber projectiles at a reduced rate of fire. Also deals increased precision damage when aiming down sights. Now let's break down these traits one by one. Let's start with Fanatical Lance. It reads that rapid final blows causes targets to explode into a pool of radiolarian fluids. Now this is practically identical to how the origin trait on our Vex-themed weapons work, taking about 3 rapid final blows to then see the target explode, dealing AoE damage around the target, and then drops that radiolarian pool. Now the radiolarian pool isn't necessarily game breaking. You can see here on Choir of One, it's only doing like 4,215 damage, so nothing crazy. Subsequently, it also has no synergy with our artifact mod Logic Reductor, which is a really good artifact mod as it amps up all of our weapons that are Vex themed this past season, but that does not have any effect on Choir of One. Now the next part of the perk reads that hip firing launches multiple projectiles at once in a slow moving spread pattern, and they detonate on impact. Now each one of these hip fire shots consumes 5 ammo, but it does a hefty amount of damage. Here at Coral, it's doing 35,382 damage per volley. Now honestly, it's this that really makes Choir of One so unique. And if you look closely, when you fire from the hip, you can actually see when it's a single projectile before it actually splits into 5 weaker projectiles after about 7.5 meters. Now, this was actually discovered by Mossy Max over on Twitter, so a huge shout out to him. But as you see here, as long as you're within 7.5 meters, you will get that maximum damage. Now, you don't need to go out of your way. You don't need to put yourself in a risky situation just to get that maxed out damage. Just know the closer your enemies do get to you, though, the more lethal you actually become, at least when you're hip firing. Now, outside of that range here at Coral, that actually drops to 32,015 damage, which, let me be clear, is still really, really good. This weapon is full of strange quirks, but that's part of its appeal. I will say, though, considering that we do have ammo changes on the horizon for Choir of One, hip firing is going to be something that we do need to be at least a bit more conscious about. A lot of my previous time playing with this weapon was really just me running around hip firing like mad, but there is going to be a point after the ammo changes where I would assume we will need to be a bit more conservative. But that also brings us to its auto rifle form, literally aiming down sights. When you aim down sights, this will utilize the exotic perk Command Frame, giving us that extended range and that increase in precision damage. Now, when aiming down sights, this firing mode only utilizes 1 ammo versus the 5 when hip fire, but of course it does deal much less damage, that being 12,212 damage per crit here against Carl. But keep in mind, this is only using 1 ammo per shot, and we have 25 shots in the magazine. Hip firing is great for dealing with champions or any other meaty targets that are up close, mini bosses, whatever, but aiming down sights is really your better option when it comes to clearing ads. Now, with that out of the way, I want to take a look at our first available catalyst that we got for Choir of One, that being Subsistence. Now, this is a very known trait in the game, and it works really well here for Choir of One. Essentially, though, defeating targets partially reloads the magazine from reserves. Now, on a primary auto rifle, this gives us 70% of the mag reloaded from reserves each kill. Now, unfortunately, it works the same here with the special auto rifle. I was hoping there was going to be a difference there in percentages, but no, still 17%. Now, here's the thing. I like Subsistence, but at the same time, this season, we have artifact mods like Targeting Autoloader, which pretty much already fills that role of Subsistence. Not only does it reload your weapon from reserves on kills, but it also grants us increased weapon damage for auto rifles as well. On the one-to-one comparison, it even reloads more ammo than base Subsistence, being 20% of our magazine at 1 stack, and then a whopping 40% of our magazine at 5 stacks. Now, granted, this is only for this season, or I guess in this case, this episode, but even taking that out of the equation, I still don't think Subsistence is the best option. Next up, we have Destabilizing rounds. This is our other exotic catalyst, where final blows causes nearby targets to become volatile. This is a really solid catalyst, especially for my folks that are not leaning into volatile. I know for my hunters with Gerfalcons or even Spirited Gerfalcons, you've already got this on lock, but for everyone else, this is really nice. My only issue I have with Destabilizing rounds is that it does have an internal cooldown, and that's why Destabilizing rounds is kind of trailed behind things like Volt Shot and Incandescent, is because of that cooldown. And I really do wish Bungie would take that away, or at least drop that cooldown even further. But this takes us to our third and final catalyst. This was the catalyst that we just got this week, and was the catalyst that we were all waiting for, that being Onslaught. The original perk on Breakneck back in the day, Onslaught has come back on a number of different weapons, but it's actually present here on Choir of One. Now, it states that final blows with this weapon increases its rate of fire. Now, this is a substantial increase, and you'll notice this when you're playing with Onslaught for the first time on Choir of One, or really any other weapon. But this perk stacks up to 3 times, it lasts for 4.5 seconds, and it substantially increases our rate of fire. So taking Choir of One, for example, our base rounds per minute is 225. With a single stack, this actually increases it to 270 rounds per minute. 2 stacks is at 315, and 3 stacks, it caps out at a perfect 360 rounds per minute. And keep in mind, that's just one of the benefits from Onslaught. The other benefit is that it actually increases our reload speed. Times 1 is plus 15 reload, times 2 is plus 25, and times 3 is plus 35. This is an S tier perk. And even though I greatly appreciate Subsistence and I love Destabilizing rounds, Onslaught takes ad clearing to that next level. And what I actually found when utilizing Onslaught is that I could use it more so aiming down sights. Not that you couldn't before, but that overall DPS is greatly increased here with that rate of fire bump. This, in my opinion, is the best catalyst for Choir of One. Now, I know you probably won't take my word for it, which is why we come bearing numbers. Damage potential here with Onslaught is insane. And what Onslaught allows is for us to blow our entire load extremely fast. And as long as you are getting more kills, you can maintain that buff. So starting at base, while aiming down sights, it takes us 144 frames to shoot 10 shots, which is equivalent to about 2.4 seconds. With each critical shot doing 12,212 damage here, that gives us a total damage of 122,120 damage. Now again, this is for those 10 shots, but this equates to a DPS value of 50,883. Now, if we proc Onslaught times 1, it actually only takes 2 seconds to get off 10 shots now, bringing our DPS to 61,060. At times 2 Onslaught, it takes 1.7 seconds to fire those 10 shots, giving us a DPS value of 71,835. And then at a whopping times 3, this takes us only 1.5 seconds to fire those 10 shots with a DPS value of 81,413. So from just this alone, guys, obviously Onslaught is putting out. Of course, do keep in mind, this is under optimal conditions, right? You're not missing any crits, your activation time for Onslaught, yada yada. But the point is, those are the DPS values that you can reach, which is very impressive. But this also takes us to our hipfire. Again, the hipfire allows us to shoot that volley, that being 5 shots at a time. And as we covered earlier, within 7.5 meters, that is 35,382 damage per each of those volleys. Now this brings us to our total 1 mag damage of 176,910. Now the crazy part is just how fast you can deal that damage. At base, it only takes 1.1 second to empty your entire mag. That actually gives us a theoretical 1 mag DPS for Choir of One of 160,827 when firing from the hip. Keep in mind, this is at base. No buffs, no Onslaught, just Choir of One putting out all on its own. Now if we add Onslaught to the equation, keep in mind, you do of course have to proc it, which of course is going to consume some shots. This is under perfect conditions and even some theoretical conditions here as well. But at times 1 Onslaught, you're looking at 0.9 seconds to empty the mag. This actually brings our DPS value up to 196,567. At times 2, it takes roughly 0.77 seconds to empty our mag with a DPS value of 229,753. And then finally, at Onslaught times 3, it takes takes only 0.7 seconds to blow your entire load for a whopping DPS value of 252,729. Now, I need to stress here, this is under perfect conditions and in some cases theoretical. But if you have things like Actium War Rig or Artifact Mod that's auto-reloading the weapon, you can essentially start by aiming down sights, getting kills while shooting in its normal auto rifle form, get those 3 stacks, and then instantly blow your load. Almost to the point where I kind of think it's overkill, but it's there, man. And in terms of power fantasy, Onslaught allows Choir of One to take it to that next level. Now, I will say, after the ammo changes, I think both scavenger mods, reserve mods, and even a special ammo finisher mod is going to be vitally important to keep Choir of One in the gunfight. That's the nerf that's going to be coming up in October, as mentioned by Bungie. Now, they've stated they're going to be decreasing our ammo reserve. As of now, at base, we spawn with 250 ammo, which can then be increased to 375 with reserve mods. The change they're going to be making in Revenant is they're going to be decreasing that down to 200 at base and only increasing to 300 with reserve mods. The other change they're also making to Choir of One is that Divinity and it have some sort of buggy interaction. Essentially, Choir of One is somehow doing 250% more damage than anticipated to combatants when combined with Divinity and shooting point blank with Choir of One. That too will also be addressed in Revenant. But despite those nerfs and changes that are coming to it, guys, I think this exotic is going to be lethal for a very long time. It's so good that I am finding it very difficult to not use it in literally every build that I use. At base, this was an exotic that I already highly recommended to everyone. And whether it's destabilizing rounds or onslaughts, I'll leave it to you guys to choose between those two, as I do believe those are your 2 best options. For me though, onslaught was the cherry on top for this already deadly exotic. If you're interested in getting this weapon, down below will be guides, including their catalysts and their intrinsics. It's a lot of stuff, I know, but we'll have that going to you very shortly. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.